Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a look at some of the most therapeutically powerful but also systemically dangerous medications out there.
That's right.
And the sources we're using today are, they're dense, they're clinical and academic. We're basically getting a blueprint for what are called adrenocortical agents.
Exactly. We are diving deep into the world of steroid hormones. So think of drugs like prednisone, fludrocortisone. And our mission here is really to translate these complex control mechanisms,
All the therapeutic uses, the safety stuff.
all of it, and turn it into clear, actionable knowledge for you. We're using a nursing pharmacology chapter as our guide, so we're focusing on anatomy, the HPA axis regulation, the drug categories, and, well, the absolute non-negotiables for safety.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting right at the source. We're talking about the adrenal glands, these little triangular caps that sit right on top of your kidneys. And they have two really distinct parts. The inner part, the adrenal medulla, is actually part of your sympathetic nervous system.
Your fight-or-flight system.
Right, your quick reaction system, releasing epinephrine and norepinephrine.
But our focus today is that outer shell, the adrenal cortex. This is where the three major types of corticosteroids are made. First up, you've got the smallest group, the androgens.
The male sex hormone.
Yeah, male sex hormones, but they also have a subtle effect on electrolytes and protein production.
Then we get to the really crucial two. So second are the glucocorticoids. The name gluco really tells you everything, doesn't it?
It does. They increase blood glucose, they push the body to store fat, what's called lipogenesis, and they break down proteins. It's all about preserving energy.
The body's ultimate survival mode.
Exactly. And third are the mineralocorticoids. Again, the name is a dead giveaway. They manage your minerals and your fluids. They make you retain sodium and water, which builds up your fluid volume, and they push potassium out of the body.
So how does the body decide when to fire off these incredibly potent chemicals? That's all managed by the master regulator, the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Walk us through that cycle because it dictates everything about how we dose these drugs.
It's a beautifully designed system. It's all about checks and balances. The hypothalamus, which is like the command center, it releases corticotropin-releasing hormone, or CRH.
Okay.
That CRH then travels down and it stimulates the anterior pituitary to release ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone.
And ACTH is the final signal that tells the adrenal cortex, go, start making those corticosteroids.
Precisely. But here's the clever part, the self-regulation. As the levels of those corticosteroids rise in the blood, they trigger a negative feedback loop.
They shut it down.
They basically tell the hypothalamus and pituitary, hey, we've got enough. Stop releasing CRH and ACTH. It's an essential protective mechanism to keep things stable.
And that self-regulating mechanism brings us directly to the concept that dictates the single most important rule for taking these medications.
The diurnal rhythm, absolutely.
Tell us about that.
The diurnal rhythm is just our normal 24-hour cycle. So for people who are awake during the day, CRH peaks around midnight. This means your ACTH and then your corticosteroid levels, they naturally surge first thing in the morning.
So like between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m.
Typically, yes. Highest in the morning, and then they fall to their lowest levels by evening.
And the clinical relevance here is just fascinating. This morning peak of natural corticosteroids is basically your body's anti-inflammatory and immunosuppressive shield for the day.
It is, and it's why you often see patients' fevers tend to rise in the evening.
As those natural steroid levels drop.
Right. The immune and inflammatory systems are allowed to ramp back up. It's an evolutionary trade-off. Really conserve energy during the day, mount a big response at night.
So the nursing implication is
Right.
it's crystal clear.
It has to be. To mimic this normal rhythm and to stop us from completely shutting down that vital HPA axis with medication, patients have to take their corticosteroids immediately when they wake up. Right there in that 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. window.
Now, that's the slow, steady rhythm. But then there's the stress reaction, fight or flight, which just throws that whole clock out the window.
It completely bypasses it. When your body senses acute danger, the sympathetic nervous system just triggers a rapid release of ACTH.
And in a crisis, those actions are incredibly helpful, right? Increasing blood volume, dumping glucose for energy.
Yes, and blocking inflammation to conserve resources for fighting or fleeing. But here's where it goes from helpful to harmful. If that stress is prolonged, say a patient is extremely anxious after surgery, that constant high level of steroids starts to block protein building.
Which means poor wound healing.
Poor wound healing and a chronically suppressed immune system, leaving them vulnerable.
Which is a perfect setup to talk about what happens when this whole system fails, starting with adrenal excess or Cushing's syndrome.
Right. Cushing's can be from a tumor or adrenal overgrowth, but most commonly it's from giving too many external or exogenous steroids.
And the signs are classic. You can spot them.
They're very distinctive, which is why we monitor so closely. You see that moon-like face, central obesity, high blood pressure, osteoporosis, and in women, hirsutism, or increased body hair.
Our sources also mentioned a very specialized therapy for some Cushing's patients who can't have surgery, pasireotide diaspartate, or Signifor.
Yes, it's a somatostatin analog. It works by inhibiting the tumor from secreting so much ACTH and cortisol, but even that has major risks.
Like what?
You can induce hypercortisolism, so too little cortisol, significant hyperglycemia, and bradycardia.
Okay, so now let's flip to the other side of the spectrum, the danger of adrenal insufficiency. What happens when a patient is on external corticosteroids for a long time?
Well, the HPA axis sees those high levels, and it does its job. It follows that negative feedback loop and shuts down ACTH production.
And if there's no ACTH stimulating the glands, what happens to them physically?
They atrophy. The text has a great visualization for this in figure 36.1. The adrenals basically go to sleep. They shrivel up from lack of use.
And the most crucial safety point here is that they can't just wake up instantly.
They can't just snap back into action. It takes weeks for them to recover and start making hormones again.
So if a patient on long-term therapy suddenly stops their medication,
Maybe they felt better or they ran out of their prescription.
they plunge into what's called an adrenal crisis.
And it is catastrophic. The body has no way to supplement corticosteroids during any kind of stress. You see physiological exhaustion, rapid fluid shifts, severe hypotension, shock. It can be fatal.
And this is why the rule is absolute.
Absolutely. Steroids must be tapered, slowly, over several weeks to give those dormant adrenal glands time to wake up and get back to work.
Let's move into the specific drugs then, starting with the workhorse. Glucocorticoids. The prototype is prednisones. We use them mostly for their anti-inflammatory and immunosuppressive effects.
And to understand that power, you have to look at the mechanism. They block inflammation by basically turning off the ignition switch for the whole process. They block arachidonic acid, so you stop forming potent inflammatory chemicals like prostaglandins and leukotrienes.
And they also hit the immune system directly.
They do. They stop lymphocytes and prevent phagocytes from even getting to the injured tissue.
So prednisone, it's an oral agent used for everything from severe allergies to autoimmune disorders. But because it's systemic, the side effects are, well, common.
Very common. Vertigo, headache, fluid retention, weight gain, and of course, a suppressed immune response.
And box 36.5 in the text lays out just how systemic these drugs are.
It really does. In the CNS, you can get severe reactions like psychosis or insomnia. In the GI tract, peptic ulcers. Cardiovascularly, we worry about fluid retention leading to heart failure. And musculoskeletally, you get muscle weakness and serious osteoporosis from the protein breakdown.
Even the route you take it matters.
It does. Topical use can cause skin atrophy. Respiratory inhalants can lead to fungal infections in the mouth, which is why we teach patients to rinse properly.
And we have to be aware of population differences.
Critically aware, box 36.4 highlights that African Americans show an increased risk of toxicity to methylprednisolone, especially after a renal transplant. It can lead to severe steroid-induced diabetes. So that means we have to be extra cautious with dosing and monitoring in that population.
We should also flag some drug interactions. Their effect can be increased, and so can the toxicity risk if they're taken with things like erythromycin or ketoconazole.
And on the flip side, their effectiveness can be decreased when you combine them with salicylates, barbiturates, or rifampin.
Okay, let's shift gears to the second category, mineralocorticoids. These are all about managing fluid and electrolyte balance.
Entirely. Aldosterone is the natural example, but the drug we use is dedicated to this role.
And their mechanism is pretty straightforward. They act right on the renal tubule, they increase sodium and water reabsorption, and at the same time, they increase potassium excretion.
Precisely. And they're indicated only for replacement therapy in adrenal insufficiency. You have to remember, they must always be used with a glucocorticoid because you need both hormonal actions for full replacement.
And our prototype here is fludrocortisone.
Yes, the preferred powerful mineralocorticoid for that replacement role.
So the adverse effects here are all about volume and electrolytes, right?
That's exactly right. Because we're causing major fluid retention, the risks are headache, edema, hypertension, heart failure. But the number one electrolyte we watch, is potassium.
Hypococalemia.
Fludrocortisone causes aggressive potassium wasting, so we have to constantly monitor for hypokalemia. It can show up as muscle weakness or, much more seriously, dangerous cardiac arrhythmias. Figure 36.3 in the text really emphasizes this balance.
So for nursing assessment, it's all about monitoring electrolytes for hypokalemia, watching for that muscle weakness, and understanding that signs of overdose like excessive weight gain or uncontrolled hypertension mean you have to stop the drug immediately.
Okay, let's bring all of this together. The essential, actionable nursing knowledge. For all these agents, administer them daily between 8 and 9 a.m.
Use the minimal effective dose for the minimal time necessary.
And, crucially, teach the patient that they must taper their dose slowly.
And what about during times of stress, like surgery or a bad infection?
You have to increase the dose to meet that demand. That's a life-saving intervention. We also have to teach them about infection control since they're immunosuppressed. No live virus vaccines, avoid crowds, be vigilant.
Lifespan considerations are important too for kids.
Dosing is based on severity and response, not on a simple weight or age formula. We have to monitor their growth closely and limit topical use because their skin absorbs so much more.
And for older adults.
They're more prone to all the adverse effects. We usually need to reduce their doses because of potential kidney or liver impairment, and they need intensive monitoring for things that steroids can easily destabilize, like diabetes, heart failure, and osteoporosis.
This is where theory meets reality. You can imagine a patient MW from the text, starting prednisone. You get this amazing therapeutic benefit, the pain relief. But the challenge is explaining that they will likely gain weight, get swollen, have higher blood pressure.
And you have to emphasize that they need to report any sign of infection immediately. And when you taper them off, they're often terrified of losing that relief, but you have to be firm. They have to taper slowly to survive, even if some symptoms come back for a bit. The power of the drug is matched only by the necessity of the safety protocols.
So the final takeaways here are clear. Glucocorticoids are your anti-inflammatory heavy hitters, often used short-term. Mineralocorticoids are for volume and electrolyte replacement.
And both demand that strict diurnal dosing and that non-negotiable slow tapering after long-term use to prevent a life-threatening adrenal crisis.
So what's the big picture here?
What's fascinating to me is that we use these powerful agents to help the body heal and feel better, but the primary safety challenge is managing this incredibly fine line between therapeutic relief and the serious systemic consequences of disrupting the body's natural HPA regulatory system, a system that was built for acute survival, which we now have to meticulously manage to ensure chronic well-being.
That's powerful context for understanding how to use these vital medications safely and effectively. Use this knowledge wisely as you guide your patients.